believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, men went to and fro over this globe, about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their empire over matter. Yet across the gulf of space, minds that are to our minds as ours are to those of the beasts that perish, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. The novel follows a hero as he evades death at the hands of those invading creatures. The hero, who is never named, watches as they destroy his land, his countrymen, his world. These superior beings, behaving much as man has behaved, begin their remorseless massacre of civilization. For the most part, Wells based his stories on what science knew or thought it knew at the time. His dark vision was that just as man is mortal, so too is humanity. The danger may come from space or here on Earth. In either case, our safety on this globe is not assured. Wells feared a kind of golden rule operating in nature. He warned that we may suffer the same fate to which we have consigned other species: extinction. Hope, if any, lies in unity and scientific knowledge. The story begins with a sign in the heavens.
Hundreds of observers saw the flame that night and the night after about midnight, and again the night after, and so for 10 nights, a flame each night. Then came the night of the first falling star. It was seen early in the morning, rushing over Winchester eastward, a line of flame high in the atmosphere. Hundreds must have seen it and taken it for an ordinary falling star. "30 miles from London, near the town of Woking, a great cylinder crashes to the ground. A crowd gathers as a hatch opens, revealing creatures which look like huge brains with eyes and mouths and tentacles for limbs. I noted a little black knot of men, the foremost of whom was waving a white flag. This was the deputation. There had been a hasty consultation, and since the Martians were evidently, in spite of their repulsive forms, intelligent creatures, it had been resolved to show them, by approaching them with signals, that we too were intelligent. Slowly, a humped shape rose out of the pit, and the ghost of a beam of light seemed to flicker out from it.
The slaughter begins. As the townspeople scatter for their very lives, the Martian's fantastic weapon, a kind of heat ray, swings about, firing at everything that moves, until nothing moves anymore.
Suddenly, like a thing falling upon me from without, came fear. I ran,
weeping silently, as a child might do.
As night falls, the Martians assemble several monster machines. Each machine is manned by a Martian brain. They begin to burn and blast their way through Woking and other towns in the direction of London. The army attacks them with its biggest guns, but it is no use. It seems clear now that all humanity is doomed. At the turn of the century, the War of the Worlds captivated a reading public already fascinated by the promise and dangers of science, and by the implications of one scientific theory in particular: evolution. Well shared and exploited the unease Darwin's theory had created. His Martians, in fact, were evolution's product.
We men are just in the beginning of the evolution that the Martians have worked out. They have become practically mere brains, wearing bodies according to their needs, just as men wear suits of clothes and take a bicycle in a hurry or an umbrella in the wet.
During the Martian invasion, the hero figures the safest place to be is in the aliens' ruined wake. He follows their machines toward London, passing through miles of devastation on the way. He meets another survivor, the curate of a local church, and they continue together. The two men take shelter for the night in a deserted house. Suddenly the house caves in, hit by the crash landing of a Martian spaceship. The two men survive, but are trapped, and through an opening in a crushed wall, they witness the Martians' dietary habits.
They did not eat, much less digest. They took the fresh, living blood of other creatures and injected it into their own veins. I cannot bring myself to describe what I could not endure, even to continue watching. The bare idea of this is no doubt horribly repulsive to us, but at the same time I think that we should remember how repulsive our carnivorous habits would seem to an intelligent rabbit.
The men notice a strange red weed growing beyond the wall. Apparently something the Martians brought with them. Trapped for 2 weeks in that ruined house, they begin to learn more about this new species come to dominate the future. The Martians do not sleep, and so they are able to work round the clock. And they do not know what illness is, there having been no microorganisms on Mars.
In the next place, wonderful as it seems in a sexual world, the Martians were absolutely without sex, and therefore without any of the tumultuous emotions that arise from that difference among men.
In the War of the Worlds, more than people and buildings are destroyed. Institutions, too, are leveled. Organized religion takes a direct hit through the person of the curate. Under severe stress, the curate loses his nerve and finally his mind. He begins to rant loudly, forcing on the hero a grim necessity.
The curate is the weakest of the weak. He gives in.
On the 15th day of his imprisonment, The narrator wakes up and discovers, to his astonishment, that the Martians are gone. He steps out of the shattered house and gazes across a landscape empty except for the Martians' red weed, which seems to be everywhere.
I felt the first inkling of a thing that presently grew quite clear in my mind, that oppressed me for many days. A sense of dethronement, a persuasion that I was no longer a master, but an animal among animals, under the Martian heel. With us it would be as with them, to lurk and watch, to run and hide. The fear and empire of man had passed away.
Alone now, the narrator resumes his grim journey toward London. As he passes the fearful leavings of the Martians, a thought of guilty recognition seizes him.
We must remember what ruthless and utter destruction our own species has wrought, not only upon animals, but upon its inferior races. The Tasmanians, in spite of their human likeness, were entirely swept out of existence in a war of extermination waged by European immigrants. Are we such apostles of mercy as to complain if the Martians war in the same spirit?
So the Martian invasion was a cautionary tale in the spirit of what goes around comes around. As the hero continues his journey, he sees that the Martians have shifted from the use of heat rays to a form of poison gas, which at least preserves the architecture. And something is happening to the red weed. It seems to be dying, probably from a mold or some other plant pest. Now, as he makes his way deeper into the city of London,
it was as if that mighty desert of houses had found a voice for its fear and solitude. I turned northwards, marveling toward the iron gates of Hyde Park. I had half a mind to break into the Natural History Museum and make my way up to the summits of the towers in order to see across the park, but I decided to keep to the ground.
he comes upon Regent's Park, and there it is.
I was not terrified. I came upon him as if it were a matter of course. I watched him for some time, but he did not move.
A second monster lies by the zoological gardens. The hero continues walking, with some purpose now, past the park.
While that voice sounded, the solitude, the desolation had been endurable. By virtue of it, London had still seemed alive, and the sense of life about me had upheld me. Then suddenly a change, the passing of something, I knew not what, and then a stillness that could be felt. Nothing but this gaunt quiet.
Moving on, he finally sees the curve of Primrose Hill, and on its crest, a third Martian.
The Martians were dead, slain by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain as the red weed was being slain, slain after all man's devices had failed.
Where it's not the earth.
The struggle between good and evil in mankind. Glorious future versus none at all. Such are the elements that do battle in a little book published almost a century ago by an enigmatic, contradictory man at war with himself, but a man whose vision embraced the future of the human race.
And when the slow cooling of the sun makes this earth uninhabitable, as at last it must do, it may be that the thread of life that has begun here will have streamed out and caught our sister planet in its toils. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be, on the other hand, that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us perhaps, is the future ordained.